and everyone knew it. Vanessa sat beside Malcolm at the head table, her posture elegant, her expression composed. Yet inside, her heart was racing. Every laugh from the Holloway side sounded forced. Every compliment felt hollow. She glanced at her mother across the room. Margaret sat with quiet dignity, speaking calmly with a few guests who had suddenly discovered deep respect. People who hadn't noticed her before now leaned in, eager to be heard. Lorraine watched from across the hall, her hands trembling as she lifted her wineglass. "They're looking at her like she's royalty," she muttered to Charles. Charles leaned closer. "Because we misjudged her." Lorraine snapped. She should have said something. "No," Charles replied quietly. "We should have asked." That truth burned. Meanwhile, Malcolm struggled to process everything. He loved Vanessa, but he had grown up believing one thing above all else: status mattered. Today, that belief had cracked. He leaned toward Vanessa. "Why didn't you tell me your mother owned the hall?" Vanessa turned to him slowly. "Why didn't your family ask who she was before throwing her out?" Malcolm opened his mouth, then closed it. Across the room, Margaret's eldest son, Adrien Johnson, arrived quietly. He wore a tailored black suit, his presence commanding but controlled. A successful tech investor, Adrien rarely attended social events, but he had come the moment he got his mother's message. He approached Margaret and kissed her cheek. "You all right?" Margaret nodded. "I am." He looked around the room, eyes sharp. "I see." Vanessa spotted her brother and rushed over, hugging him tightly. "They humiliated Mom." Adrien's jaw tightened, but his voice remained calm. "And now they know better." Margaret placed a hand on his arm. "Let it unfold naturally." But unfolding had already begun. During the reception, Lorraine insisted on a family toast. She rose, glass raised, forcing a smile. "Today is about unity," she said. "About two families becoming one." A few guests exchanged glances. Lorraine continued, "We welcome Vanessa into our family and hope this marriage reflects mutual respect." Margaret watched carefully. Then Vanessa stood. Her movement caught everyone's attention. "With respect," Vanessa said, her voice steady, "I'd like to say something too." Lorraine's smile froze. Vanessa turned slightly toward her mother. "I was raised by a woman who taught me that dignity doesn't shout," she said. "It stands. Quietly. Firmly. Even when it's insulted." A hush fell. "Today," Vanessa continued, "my mother was disrespected in a way no parent should ever experience, especially not at their child's wedding." Lorraine's face burned. Vanessa inhaled deeply. "This marriage will only survive if respect is mutual. If not, then today was just a ceremony." Murmurs rippled again. Malcolm stood beside her, conflicted. Vanessa looked at him. "I love you, but I will never shrink to fit anyone's pride." Malcolm nodded slowly. "I understand." But understanding came too late for some. Margaret rose, gently guiding Vanessa back to her seat. "You spoke your truth," she whispered. "That matters." As dessert was served, Angela Moore approached Margaret quietly. "There's something else," Angela said. "The Holloway family's contribution to the wedding was overstated." Margaret's eyes narrowed slightly. "Explain." "They claimed full payment publicly," Angela continued. "But records show partial sponsorship. Your accounts covered the majority, including the venue, decor, and security." Margaret sighed softly. "So they built pride on borrowed ground." Angela nodded. Across the hall, Lorraine laughed too loudly. Charles avoided eye contact. Malcolm stared into his glass. The gold was cracking, and soon it would crumble. Dessert arrived on porcelain plates edged with gold, but no one was really tasting it. The energy inside the Elysium Grand Hall had shifted again, this time from shock to quiet calculation. People were no longer whispering just out of curiosity. They were connecting dots, replaying moments, rethinking alliances. Power had revealed itself, and it made everyone uncomfortable. Margaret Johnson stood near the floor-to-ceiling windows, gazing out at the city skyline she helped build but never bragged about. The lights reflected softly on the glass, mirroring the calm on her face. Angela Moore joined her again, lowering her voice. "There's another issue," Angela said. "One that may surface whether we want it to or not." Margaret turned. "Go on." "The Holloways have been telling guests, and some business partners, that they financed this entire wedding as a show of dominance. That narrative is already spreading." Margaret exhaled slowly. "And the truth?" Angela opened her folder and turned it slightly so Margaret could see. Every line item was clear. Venue. Paid. Decor. Paid. Entertainment. Paid. Security. Paid. Planner. Paid. All under Johnson Holdings. Their contribution, Angela continued, covered part of the catering and the groom's suit. "That's it." Margaret closed her eyes briefly, not in anger, but in disappointment. "They tried to buy authority with lies," she murmured. Across the room, Adrien Johnson watched the Holloways closely. Years in high-level negotiations had trained him to recognize panic masked as confidence. Lorraine was speaking rapidly to a group of guests, laughter spilling out too quickly. Charles kept checking his phone. Malcolm looked like a man standing between two collapsing buildings. Adrien walked toward Malcolm and placed a firm but respectful hand on his shoulder. "Walk with me," Adrien said quietly. Malcolm hesitated, then nodded. They stepped into a side corridor lined with abstract art and soft lighting. "You love my sister," Adrien said plainly. "Yes," Malcolm replied. "I do." "Then you need to understand something," Adrien continued. "My mother doesn't flex power. She lets truth do the work." Malcolm swallowed. "I didn't know." "That's the problem," Adrien replied calmly. "Your family decided who mattered without learning who they were dealing with." Malcolm looked down. "They were wrong." "Yes," Adrien said. "And now you get to decide who you are." Back in the hall, Lorraine's confidence finally cracked when one of her socialite friends leaned in. "Lorraine," the woman whispered, "is it true Margaret Johnson owns this place?" Lorraine stiffened. "People exaggerate." The woman raised an eyebrow. "Because the event manager just confirmed it to my husband." Lorraine's breath caught. At that moment, Daniel Brooks stepped onto the small stage where the band had paused. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said smoothly, "thank you for celebrating with us tonight. On behalf of Elysium Grand Hall, we're honored to host this union." His eyes scanned the room, then landed briefly on Margaret. "As a reminder," Daniel continued, "this venue exists thanks to visionary ownership and private investment that values respect above reputation." That was all. But it landed like thunder. Lorraine's hands shook. Charles leaned toward her, whispering urgently, "We need to leave early." "Leave," Lorraine hissed. "After this humiliation?" "You humiliated yourself," Charles snapped quietly. Vanessa watched the exchange, pain tightening her chest. She leaned toward Malcolm. "I won't be silent about this," she said. "Not now. Not later." Malcolm nodded slowly. "I know." Margaret approached them, her expression gentle but serious. "Vanessa," she said, "are you all right?" Vanessa nodded. "I am. Because I see clearly now." She looked at Malcolm. "This marriage can work, but only if we're honest about power, boundaries, and respect." Malcolm took her hand. "I want that." Margaret squeezed both their hands briefly. "Then the real work begins after tonight." As the evening wound down, some guests left early, unable to sit comfortably in a room where arrogance had been undressed so thoroughly. Lorraine watched Margaret one last time, calm, composed, untouched by chaos. For the first time, fear crept into her pride, because she realized something too late. Margaret Johnson hadn't needed revenge. She only needed truth. And truth had just started speaking. The reception began to thin, not because the night was late, but because comfort had left the room. Luxury could not soften humiliation. Behind the velvet-lined double doors of a private lounge reserved for family only, the Holloways finally stopped pretending. Lorraine dropped into a leather chair, her heels kicked off with a sharp motion. "I will not be made a fool," she snapped. "Not by that woman." Charles loosened his tie, his face tight. "Lower your voice." "Lower my—" Lorraine laughed bitterly. "She let us throw her out. She let us embarrass ourselves." "No," Charles corrected. "We did that on our own." Lorraine shot to her feet. "You're taking her side now?" "I'm taking reality's side," Charles replied. "We underestimated her. And now everyone knows." The door opened. Malcolm stepped in. His presence changed the air. "We need to talk," he said quietly. Lorraine crossed her arms. "If this is about apologizing again—" "It's about respect," Malcolm interrupted. "And accountability." Charles looked at his son closely. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," Malcolm continued, choosing his words carefully, "that what happened tonight can't be brushed aside. You threw my wife's mother out of her own property." Lorraine scoffed. "She hid who she was." Malcolm shook his head. "No. You decided who she was." Silence. "Do you know how that looks?" Malcolm asked. "To Vanessa? To everyone." Lorraine's voice sharpened. "So now you're ashamed of your own family?" Malcolm met her gaze. "Tonight, yes. I am." The words landed hard. Across the hall, Margaret sat alone for the first time that evening. The noise had faded. The lights dimmed slightly. She finally allowed herself to feel the weight of the day. Adrien joined her, placing a glass of water beside her. "You held back," he said. Margaret smiled faintly. "Strength isn't always forward motion." Angela Moore approached quietly. "Mrs. Johnson, there's something you should know." Margaret looked up. "Go on." "The Holloway family has multiple business interests tied to venues like this: investors, sponsorships, influence networks. Tonight's exposure may affect more than social standing." Margaret nodded slowly. "Truth tends to travel." Angela hesitated. "Do you want to make any formal statements?" Margaret shook her head. "No press. No announcements. Let people talk." Angela smiled slightly. "Understood." Meanwhile, Vanessa stood by the balcony doors, looking out at the city lights. Her wedding gown felt heavier now, not because of fabric, but because of awareness. Malcolm joined her. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. Vanessa didn't turn immediately. "For tonight, or for who they are?" "Both," he admitted. She faced him. "I married you because I believed you were different." "I am," he said. "But I come from them. And that matters." "Yes," Vanessa replied. "It does." They stood in silence for a moment. "My mother didn't fight back," Vanessa said softly. "She didn't raise her voice. She didn't expose them." Malcolm nodded. "That scared my parents more than anger ever could." Vanessa met his eyes. "I need to know something, Malcolm. If it comes down to choosing comfort over character, where will you stand?" Malcolm didn't answer immediately. Then he said, "With you. Even if it costs me." That was the first honest thing she'd heard all night. Outside the lounge, Lorraine overheard laughter from departing guests, laughter that felt like judgment. She clenched her fists. "This isn't over," she whispered to herself. But for Margaret Johnson, it already was. She rose, gathering her shawl, and walked one last time through the hall she owned, not as a victor, but as a woman who had survived arrogance without becoming it. And somewhere deep inside the Holloway family, fear began to replace pride. Because consequences don't always arrive loudly. Sometimes they arrive quietly. And stay. Morning light spilled across the city like truth, unavoidable and revealing. Vanessa woke in the penthouse suite reserved for the newlyweds, the room still scented with roses and champagne. The city below buzzed with life, indifferent to the night before. She lay still, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment. This was supposed to be the happiest morning of her life. Instead, it felt like the beginning of something heavy. Watch out for the next chapter on this same channel, Mirror Wealth Stories. In the next episode, we'll uncover what truly happened to both families. Did they settle their differences? Or did distance become the final decision? Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share. Turn on your notification bell so you won't miss the next episode. Thank you for watching.